Injury is a part of sport. Don't do something so you don't get hurt. Do something because you want to play really well.
Starting these kids young is going to be so life-changing.
If we have no infrastructure built inside of us to withstand all of that, that's a problem. We need more research on female bodies, but we have enough research. We're just not taking action right now.
We are back with season 2. It's Lauren Duletsky.
And I'm Jackie G.
And this is the Clack podcast.
Jack, I'm so happy to be here again with you.
Happy to be here too, girl.
And I'm also super excited to be here with our listeners. So welcome back. It's Clack.
Welcome back.
We love our Clacker community so much. And we just want to... Clacker gang. We just want to remind everyone that if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel or our podcast channel, make sure you do, because we'd love to have you here. We're putting out content every week, and, we're here for you.
Our community is everything to us.
We have got Susan King Borchardt. Jackie, she's a legend in the WNBA, performance coach, works with some of the biggest players in the league.
Susan King Borchardt is an absolute legend on the W side for sports performance. I never had the privilege of personally being able to work with her, but I've heard so many stories from so many different high-level elite players, and she has just changed the game for them and continuing to keep them performing at a very high level.
I mean, I think with all eyes on player performance, particularly in the W right now, it's going to be really exciting to hear directly from the source of who's helping these women achieve the highest percentage of performance.
I can't wait to hear her break down, all the ways that she sees sports performance and what she does and how that differentiates, sports performance from physical therapy.
Yes, so I think we should just jump right in.
Let's get it.
You guys, we are so excited. We have an incredibly special guest with us here today. We have Susan King Borchardt. Susan runs Athlete Blueprint. It's a world-class destination for elite athletes. She works with some of the biggest athletes in the world. She happens to be in our backyard in Portland, Oregon. Such a blessing for us here on Clack.
We have a literal legend in my house right now.
Okay. So, thank you guys for having me.
So first, I'd just like to ask if you could give us a little overview of your background, talk a little bit about your journey.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Minnesota. I played for North Tartan. I went to Stanford. It was kind of like a dream start for me. I got there. I'm starting, playing all the minutes. It's going great. And I think it was like 9 games in. I went up for a layup, made it, got tackled by someone like 3 times my size. I'm kind of a peanut, and tore my ACL for the first time. And so I rehabbed for a full year. I had a cadaver graft, played 2 games, the graft stretch, didn't take it. So I got to do the whole thing again, and it was like, this is dark, right? Like, you know that probably better than anyone on the planet, truthfully.
I
right?
had 5 allografts.
Yes.
And the same thing happened to me after my 4th surgery, so I had to redo it because my body rejected it.
Yes.
All the things.
And they're like, oh, it's like 1 in 2 million, whatever it is. And like, of course, that's me, right? Like,
same. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, exactly. But I think for me, the blessing in disguise was my husband was also a player at Stanford, and he was rehabbing as well. And so I met him in the training room. He was the center on the men's team, and long story short, we have 4 kids now who are all about taller than me these days. And it was, such a blessing in disguise. But at the same time, I think in trying to find my way out of my injury and like my way back to playing, I sort of found my way in a sense. And so what I learned and sort of gleaned along the way, I definitely use in the perspective that I have right now with all of my athletes and helping some of them return to play and in helping them, from a conditioning, a recovery, a performance standpoint, it definitely is part of my journey that I think applies directly to what I do today.
I think someone in your position, when you're helping someone recover from an injury, the fact that you've been through it and you know it is gold.
Like literally been there. I've been in those shoes. And I know it feels like you wouldn't wish it on anyone, but we're going to take this, and on the other side, you're going to look back and say, that made me stronger. I'm better now because of that.
Yeah, totally.
Everything we're doing for these elite guys really, truly is individualized. And I think that's the beauty of it, right? Because by the time you're a pro, the way you move, your injury history, your age, all of those things kind of factor into what your performance program should look like, right? And so that's sort of what we hang our hat on of like, it's not across the board, everyone's doing the same thing, because that's not going to be optimal for each of these guys, right? And so we kind of get in there. It's what their body needs, what their lifestyle needs, where they live, what the schedule is. We really are on call to kind of adjust as the athlete's schedule adjusts, because that's just part of being an elite athlete, like a pro athlete. Like that's just part of it now. And there's a lot of that going into these guys' schedules. And I think their recovery days ends up being taken over by this shoot and that 8-hour shoot, and it's like doesn't end up actually being a recovery day. And so kind of really trying to get creative to give their body but also their mind that downtime that they need, and sort of find those pockets and build that in for them. So your question was, what kind of is the gist of Athlete Blueprint? Essentially it's to individually craft their own blueprint for each of these athletes.
What led to you actually founding Athlete Blueprint?
I actually started doing this when my husband was playing overseas. He played in the NBA for 4 years, and his navicular bone is what he kept breaking in his foot. It's like what all the big guys do. So it has a really bad blood supply. Can't play 5 games a week, but can he play 1 game really well? Yeah. He can. And so
on a limited practice schedule.
So that's what it was. We got to this team in Spain. The coach was like, "Oh, like you play like that? I don't care what you do during the week." And so he's like, "Here."
Yeah.
And so I ended up doing all of his stuff, essentially, like kind of crafting his practice plan. And then I was working with essentially the college age team below him. So I was their performance coach, and then eventually ended up working with his team. And so I started doing it over there. And then I was the performance coach at Stanford. And when we moved to Seattle for my husband to become a PT, I essentially started with the Storm, and I started doing it there. And then we moved to Portland for my husband's doctorate program. And I was kind of like, okay, I'm going to be mom for a while. I had been working with Sue for a while at that point, and she's like, hey, I know you don't do this, but like, is there any way we could do this via distance? And I was like, I don't think so. I don't know how that could possibly work. You know, it's like so much in person, because it is like there's a lot of like touch points and stuff. But she's like, hey, like let's see if we could figure out. Can we just try? And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's fine. But that's kind of how Athlete Blueprint started. It was more like okay, what do I have to do to create what each of these individuals needs from me? Like, how can I give them what they need? It was more about like serving the people that wanted to work with me, and like doing my very best for the athletes in front of me. And then I think end of day, that sort of served us well in a sense. It's more like looking at this athlete puzzle, like each of them has their own puzzle, and like how can I sort of put these pieces together in a way that fits best for Sloot or Kelsey. It's like they each have a different puzzle, and like their life is different. Like Sloot has a baby now, so like evening stuff doesn't work so well, but like maybe early morning stuff, you know, so it's kind of like designing it around what their life flow is like too, and what their body needs. We've added infrastructure, and my husband is sort of the PT now who looks at it through his PT lens, and I'm the performance lens. And I think there's so much gray area with all these athletes. Truly, there isn't one of these athletes that isn't dealing with something that could be, you know, thrown to the PT side of things. And so having their programming have that piece woven in, you know, we're looking at it dual-sided essentially. We're really into Pilates. We have a wonderful Pilates instructor, shout out Brooke. So it's really nice to have another person who is saying what we're saying, but in a slightly different way, and it's a different voice. They get sick of my voice, which I totally get that. You know, it's just like, it's nice to have another sort of element to things that's a little bit different. And so we use that. We just actually started with a breathing specialist, Kira May. She's amazing.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because everybody's different. And I think, how can some of that knowledge be shared? Because I think there are some basics that people could really learn from to help in their own performance.
We have sort of shied away from being out there in a sense, in terms of like, we're not putting out videos of what we're doing currently. That just really hasn't been the space I've been in, mostly because I think there's so many asks from these guys that like when they're with me, I want their time and what we're doing to be private. And so a lot of times, like sometimes they'll be, you know, like Marino, like show the workout, or she'll decide, and like that's her choice. It is honestly the power of Sue Bird. I truly believe that. Like she is, to me personally, she's always going to be someone who's like so special in my life, but like just in terms of everyone she touches, it's like there's something magic about her.
She's a
magic.
magnet.
It just really, really is.
I didn't realize that she was like kind of the catalyst behind everything, which makes a ton of sense because I was listening to her podcast recently and she always shouts you out. I've been hearing about you for years, and just like everyone in the league has speak so freaking highly of you, and you've touched so many people. You've helped so many people.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's hard to kind of, I mean, when I think about the people that we're actually working with and like how it all works, it almost seems like a joke. To be so fortunate to be a mom and then also get to continue doing what I love. Like I am so thankful to Sue, because like she truly gave me that, and that's such a gift.
When you talk about Sue, I can tell like how much you love her, like what good friends you are. And we talk a lot about friendship in sport and how women can be competitive and also be friends and have a lot of respect. Can you just talk a little bit about your relationship with her if you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah, the first day I met her was I was a performance coach for the Storm, and she was having surgery. And so I met her in the hallway, and I'm like, nice little, like little Susan from Stanford, and she's, from New York, like, and she meets me, she's like, I already know, I'm gonna do a shit ton of squats. And I'm like, fair, like, yes, you are gonna be doing some of that, And then the first day, we're in there together. I'm like, okay, we're gonna do something called the Lisa series. And she's like, who'd you say? I said, oh, Lisa, like, it's my PT that I worked with at Stanford. And she's like, what's your last name?
So she knew.
She had done her knee rehab with her. Same rehab woman. So, like, immediately, this woman is, like, pure magic. So immediately from that standpoint, like, I had, like, street cred, and it was like, okay, we have common ground, because anything coming from her was going to be good. She knew that,
Yeah,
And so I think from there, it was just kind of like, and fast forward to, working with her for all these years, working with Megan. I've gotten to know Megan and be really close with her as well. And I mean, I don't know that you could find a better, more fun-loving, amazing sports couple out there, right?
We're obsessed. We love them.
Yeah,
we listen to their podcast.
They're
we love
amazing.
them.
Yes. Now sort of fast forward to being at the Olympics with her, and now sort of this new role that she's stepping into. Like, she is the most intelligent, most sort of caring person that it's just like she is USA basketball to me, for all the time she spent there and just sort of how she carries herself. And so I just can't wait to see what she's going to do with that role. It's going to be amazing. And she was like born for it, So.
And you get to work alongside her and with USA basketball as
So
well,
up until
right?
this point, I've done that.
Okay.
I've been in the performance role for them.
It was just really cool to see you light up when you talk about her, because I think celebrating the friendships that emerge out of relationships in sport is so special.
These are people that, like, we're sort of living life with, And so in that sense,
Community.
I'm really lucky that I'm surrounded by such special, like, amazing humans, like amazing athletes, yes, but like they're great humans too. And so I think I'm just like very privileged to be in the space that I'm in.
Do you normally start working with athletes after they get injured?
That's kind of how it used to be. It's a little bit different now, though. Like, we're getting some of these athletes who are like, I'm healthy, like, I just want to maximize, But I would say in general, it usually is like after a really traumatic injury, or, hey, I don't feel like I used to feel, I don't feel like I want to feel, help me.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of,
Sitting in the position that you're in, helping athletes with sports performance, how do you feel when, you have a plan for an athlete and they do get injured? Like, how does that impact you? I guess because I know sometimes, like, you think of certain programs where a lot of people like tear their ACL. So there's like certain teams that like have this kind of like stigma about them a little bit. Like, and I think the first natural instinct is to like point the finger at like, who's the sports performance coach? Who's the PT, right?
Right.
So how do you feel like when, I guess, an athlete gets injured through your program?
So I think of it twofold. One, when it's someone else's program and I'm looking at it, I'm like, think about all the factors that go into that athlete. Yeah. I can't control the length of practice. I can't control how much you slept last night. I can't control where you're at on your cycle. There's so many different things. But if it's my athlete, immediately I'm like, okay, like running through, like, what could I have done differently? What could I have, I think you're always doing that as a performance coach, because when you're working with people this individually, like you're this deep in the foxhole with them, it's like you want to give them everything you have.
Well, I could tell you for sure it's not your plan. Like,
no, but like
you specifically,
it's like
you do an amazing job. You're at a very elite level.
No, I mean
with that, but I can imagine
it's a
that.
part of it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's a part of it for
like,
sure.
Yes, you like feel that responsibility like very heavily.
Obviously, we know that you can't prevent injury. Right. You're not like this magic person that can
I actually
just
hate that word. I hate like injury prevention because there is no such thing.
Yeah,
right?
no,
like,
there's not.
Injury is a part of sport.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's the part, though, that you're trying to prevent, like, the contactless injuries, where it's like, okay, there was some sort of deficit there. It wasn't within the game, right? Like, there was no one ran you over, and that happened as a result of, like, someone diving through your knees. Like, that's going to be a part of sport, right? Like, that's never going to go away, but it's, like, I think controlling what you can control. That's sort of the injury reduction side of things.
Like that, injury reduction.
Yeah, I think injury reduction is the term that I prefer to use. But then when we're looking at things, I don't actually like to look at it from an injury reduction standpoint. I like to look at it from a performance standpoint.
It's more of a positive mind frame.
Exactly. It's not doing something so something doesn't happen.
Right.
It's doing something because this is what I want, right? Like I'm chasing something. And so that's where we try and direct our focus, right? Like we're chasing really fast sound decel with great alignment, right? And so that in and of itself, if you do that well, is going to help reduce injury, because oftentimes that's where it happens.
I think for me, when I think of injuries and the injuries that I went through, after my first injury, I was like, okay, I can come back stronger. But after I was doing it so many other times, that mental piece kicked in for me. And I was like, okay, mentally, I just can't get to that elite level anymore. And that's what always held me back. What is your experience when working with elite athletes and them being able to come back stronger from a major injury?
I think two things. One, I think you can't get there right away. I think it's important to be like, yeah, this sucks. Like be there with them, like hold their hand, and be like, yeah, like this is okay. But then we've had that pity party, and now it's like, all right, we got to reframe. We are going to take this and the strength we're going to gain by getting from here to here. That once you're on that side, that's something no one can take from you, right? Like you've been through it. It's not going to be worse than this, and you have proved to yourself by the time you get there, you're going to be able to do anything, right? And so I think that a lot of these athletes, I think we can use Kelsey probably, she would be great with me saying this. I think she would say now, like, that was a blessing. I learned so much about myself and what I do when I'm faced with hard things, that when I'm now faced with hard things, like, I rely on that. Like, I've been through that shit, like, and I made it through. And so, like, where I am today, like, is a reflection of how I was able to overcome then, and I use that now mentally when I'm faced with hard things.
I think it also pushes you to do things that you wouldn't normally do if you were in the routine of being, you know, a player and not being injured, because you're not working on those like tangible things as much as you would be if you were injured. Not saying that like, oh, you need to be injured and like it's going to help you. No, but like there are moments and things that you can take away that you would never do if you weren't injured, that like will really optimize your performance when you're actually playing again.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Through injury.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think there are things that you decide that, hey, this actually, I really love how I feel when this is now included in my routine. And so part of your routine, once you are on the other side of that return to play, is reflective of how things went and what you felt during your recovery.
For sure. Know? Yeah.
I have like kind of a cool story. I won't use her name, but we worked with a young girl. We started with her when she was, I want to say a junior in high school. We started with her after her second ACL. And they had basically told her, like, hey, like, same thing with me, like, it's probably not going to be in the cards for you, like, second time, didn't go well. And she needed surgery on her other leg. And we're like, no, you don't. That leg is actually just really weak, and it's been taking the brunt of everything because the surgery leg, right? Like,
overcompensating.
Exactly. And so I wasn't sure, like, she wanted it. I couldn't, like, tell, and she, like, totally proved me wrong. Long story short, now playing D1, was in this crazy car accident, like, shattered pelvis. I mean, just
oh my God.
On her skateboard. I don't know the exact details, but crazy. And now she just tore her other ACL following that. And it's like, my husband's working with her now in the gym, and he's like, her attitude, it's like, we're great. Like, we're going to be back, because she's been through all these things. And he's like, this is nowhere near where we met you. On this side, she's like, oh, I know. Like, I know I got this. Like,
that's
and so
awesome.
It's like, do you know what I mean? It's like you sort of gain confidence of knowing, like, shit was bad. I made it through. Here I am. I got this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
that's really powerful.
How I hear you guys have overcome in these experiences is so inspirational, because this mindset can be applied to so many other things in our lives. We all deal with hard stuff, and injury is really, really hard. But whether it's injury or mental health or these things, like, it's all about your attitude.
Yeah. I think that's like actually absolutely the right thing. It's like, how are you approaching it?
Yeah.
Your energy is everything about it.
And there's people that, you know, when they have a major injury, they just say, forget it. You
Woe
know,
is me. Like, you know, there's no way, like.
Yeah, so it takes a certain level of commitment and just like a mindset and maybe a little bit of crazy to like
Slight dose of crazy.
You know?
I think that's like, everyone says that in the W. Like, everybody who's in here, there's just
got
a little something. And it's so true.
It is
like,
true.
Oh, yeah. Like,
you have it, I have it, for sure.
Do you feel like the industry is where it needs to be as far as technology to support, like recovery, nutrition, etc.? Or do you feel like there's just a bigger, more room for innovation in this space to help some of the things that we use to train and perform?
I think there's always room for innovation, especially on the female side. One of the things we're using these days is called Plantiga. And it's something that I'm sure you guys have heard of, like Connexon, where people are putting chips and stuff, right? Like that's pretty well known, very much so used in the NBA. It's in all the arenas, blah, blah, right? Plantiga actually goes into your shoe, and it gives us asymmetry side to side. So for somebody who has had a previous injury or someone who is returning to play, super impactful in terms of being able to see, like, oh, when she gets tired, all of a sudden that asymmetry this, and like, where is that where's that fatigue threshold? And so it's really something that for me, and again, some of these athletes we're working with, like we do have histories like this. I want to know that. I want to see that. I want to have tabs on it. Is it the end all be all to all decision making? Absolutely not. But can we see trends? Can we, is that a great tool to have in our toolbox? Yes. Yeah. So that's one of the things, and I'm constantly learning more about it. But these are tools that I think are really beneficial to have. Again, it's like a collection of things that we're using with these guys. That's one of the things. Another thing we're doing is called Springbok. It's a 3D MRI. I'm sure you've had a bazillion MRIs in your life, right? You see the joint, you see the meniscus, you see all of those things. This is an MRI in 3D of all the musculature in your body. So, for example, one of the ACL, like really high level, high profile ACL return to plays that I was a part of, we could see at, we took it baseline, I think 6 weeks after her surgery, and then we did it 3 months and 6 months, and you can see the growth and also still like the differential side to side, and it's like very motivating for an athlete to be like, wow, I just gained 48% quad strength in this past 6 week block. Like, keep fucking going. Like, this is working, like that type of thing. Or we can look at it and say, hey, we still have a 12% deficit. It's related directly, we're going to do this, this, and this, but also I can see that this left hip is also at it. So that's affecting, so it's like there's all these different correlations. And that's been something that has been a really cool piece to sort of add and build into these player profiles that we're working with. That was one of the first things I did at Unrivaled. I was the director of performance. And that was one of the things that I really wanted to have for everyone there. And so we built it into our sort of medical and performance intake with everyone. And so it was just, they had a mobile trailer where they had this MRI machine in it. It was part of our rotation. They went out and did it. And so everyone will have that mark in the sand from this is where we were. And ideally, most were, healthy. And so it's like, we see where you're at when you're healthy. If God forbid something's to happen to one of them during the year, we have that to compare it to. And then we also have it to compare it to next year when they come back. And hopefully that's, again, part of the process. So,
wow, that is amazing.
There's some really cool things out there that it's just, again, is it the end all be all? No, but is it a really cool piece to have, within what we're doing? Absolutely. And so is that space going to continue to grow? Yes. And so to kind of continue to learn as it's all coming to market and all of those things, really great. I think one of the areas that is going to continue to grow is sort of the cycle on the female side and sort of how we're able to monitor that. Right now, I think one of the biggest issues is if you're on birth control, it's really, you can't kind of like follow where you're at and make informed decisions based off of that. So that's going to, I think, probably change at some point. There'll be other ways for us to figure that out. And then how we become more impactful with, once we do understand sort of that flow for each individual, making decisions based on recovery and performance.
The reason I bring up technology is because it feels like, every day you see a new aesthetics treatment, some innovation that makes you look younger. But like when it comes to really understanding the female body and being able to act and innovate around things like our cycles, better bras, like it feels like there's just not enough attention there. We don't even know why girls have ACL tears. It was just like, it was such a polarizing situation. And that's why I was sort of asking you the question around technology, because it feels like those are really cool technologies. And I'm like, okay, now I know about those. I want to learn more, research more.
When you were talking about just like the 3D imaging and like being able to see like your muscle from like your quads and the growth as you continue on, like we used to just like measure the quad with like
an
a tape measure.
Measuring tape.
So when we talk about innovation and like I look back from then to now, like there has been a lot more.
Yes.
And those tools are super valuable.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing about both of those technologies in particular is like much of the studies and much of their population up until now has been male. And they're like wanting like to support the female space. And they're like, hey, let's find a way to like do it. Like we got to be a part of that, so let's do it. And they're like all about sort of gaining that population into what they're doing, not like, oh yeah, it doesn't really matter. It was like, no. Like, we want to be a part of that. Like, help us figure out how, One of the things we're really big on is red light therapy and sort of steam and sauna and cold and like how infrared, like all of those things. That was actually one of the biggest like hits at Unrivaled is we had an infrared an infrared sauna and a Finnish sauna. We had both of those. We had a sauna room essentially, and that place was popping. Like it was great, And so I think it's it's figuring out like, okay, how do we get access to those for our athletes, like, and for, the regular people, like, and then how do you incorporate that again into your daily schedule? And that's one of the things that we really try and do is like take the think out of it and just the like, oh, yep, okay, she wants me to go sit in there, and then she's gonna 4-4-4 breathing in there, or like, oh, listen to the great. And so that's one of the other ways that we use technology is sort of in a recovery standpoint. Or from a recovery
It's just like
standpoint.
so many women, you can ask a lot of women, they have a skin routine, right? And I think if more of us were talking about our performance routines, it would change everything. It would start to, like, we'd ask more questions. And we know, like I said, when women want something or want information, like, we go get it. We ask our friends, And so I think that's why I'm personally so fascinated by the space, because I'm not the elite athlete, but I care about living a healthy life. I don't want to wake up and be injured, right? I want my kids to grow up healthy in sports.
Right.
And it just sometimes feel like it's so hard to figure out where to start there.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I think some ways too, like, okay, so you're a runner. Let's use you as an example, okay? You're a runner and you have Peloton, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Big
so
Peloton.
you're already doing the meat of it. You've got this, you run, right? So you run, we've got that.
Yeah.
What are a couple layers that we could build on either side of that to sort of improve, one, your performance, but two, your feel of what's going on?
Yes.
So could we find on the Peloton a 10-minute Pilates that you could do before you then do a little 5-minute band routine before you head out the door, and you're like fully into your powerhouse and your muscles before you start your run? So when you start your run, you're like getting big bang for your buck out of it and you feel really good, right? I think when you feel good doing something, it's more enjoyable, right? Like that's one of the other things that, like, we always like start with our athletes' feet. Like, we're making, like, if their feet feel good, then usually like they're going to have a better starting experience. So let's say you feel better during your run, and then instead of just like stopping your run and getting in the shower while you're still sweating and like trying to cool down enough, what if you said, okay, I'm going to go on Peloton and I'm going to find a 5-minute breath routine, and I'm going to throw my legs up the wall, and I'm going to down-regulate myself, and then I'm going to go in the shower. Like, those are like 15 minutes that you added, but I think would actually be really impactful in terms of how you feel and what you get out of your workout.
Can you talk a little bit about the mindset of the elite athlete? Because I imagine it takes a ton of commitment and, effort to really go through with the program and do it right.
Yes.
So can you just speak a little bit about like the mentality that you see with all of your elite athletes, and like who stands out, who differentiates himself from someone else?
The athletes that work with us, it ends up working really well because they've chosen this. And so if there's someone we're continuing with, it's like they've chosen it, they have skin in the game, so do we, versus like, a normal strength coach that is working with the whole team. It's like not all those athletes want to be in there doing that. And so it's hard when someone's not fully invested. Like, you get out of it what you put into it. And so in that sense, the athletes are like, hey, I want this. I want to like reach for that 1-2% difference, right? It's more like a lifestyle. They all joke about it a little bit. But it really is like a lifestyle. And I think kind of the cool thing is we've sort of built this family a little bit. They all know who's doing it for the most part. And it's like they'll see each other like across the line when they're warming up for and they'll be like, all right, here we are out here doing all of our
Susan's
stuff,
workout.
Yeah, exactly right. So I actually love that.
I think for me, because I had so many different experiences and I tore my ACL 5 times, I literally probably say this on every single episode. I learned something new from each time.
Yep.
Yeah, which I'm sure you can relate to that. But I think across the board, what I realized the importance after all of it happened was what I was eating and like how I was treating my body, and like being as like thin as possible, because I always had a little bit of extra weight on me. And as I look back on it, I had people and PTs that were telling me, I need to eat better and watch my diet and this and that, but it wasn't really emphasized in the way that it should have been, because I was carrying that extra, 5, 10, maybe even 15 pounds during that time. And I think that had a lot to do with why I kept re-injuring myself. I look back on my PTs, because that's what I had during college, was just PT. And I had the same PT for 4 years. And then my last PT was different. It was Fabrice Gautier. I don't know if you know who that is. Osteopath in Beverly Hills. He changed everything for me. So after I worked with him, what he noticed with me was every time that I tore my ACL, I was hyperextending my knee. So I was always standing very straight up and my knee was going back like this. So a lot of our training was doing everything with a bent knee.
It's so funny you say that. Like, in our fire series, if you asked 10 girls to jump and land, the landing mechanics are going to be, they're going to jump and they're going to land with almost straight legs, and there's no absorption.
Yeah.
And so what we work on is that basketball is a single leg sport, essentially, right? Like, you're going to jump, but truthfully, you're running, you're cutting, you're everything for the most part, is happening on a single leg, right? Or as much of it is. And so we really focus on that, like, absorption and being able to absorb and control, which really starts at your hip, right?
Yeah.
And your ankle. And everyone focuses on your knee, but it's like truly that whole chain, but really being able to absorb and have that nice bent knee position. So
100%. And I think like the difference between my last PT versus what I was doing before, it was just everything was very, very different. And there's a reason why I was able, to stay healthy after that. And like you said earlier, coming like a lot of hip stuff, a lot of alignment stuff and osteopathic work. Yeah, just a lot of like how we land in everything like single leg versus double leg. So I just think that, my workout regimen was just very, very different and almost inexperienced at the time. I don't think that a lot of the stuff that I was doing, it was first and foremost, I don't want to call anyone out, but I was working with a football, like physical therapist. He was, the USC football PT. So very different sports, very different, everything, different mindsets. So I just think there was a lot that I lacked in those 4 years that I wish that I would have just had, a very different experience.
in what you're saying, Jackie, I think what I also learned through my injuries is like, okay, and I see this now, like there's a lot of different ways to get from point A to point B, right? And there isn't like a wrong way and a right way, but maybe a right way for a specific body. And like maybe you could take something from that pathway and pull it into yours, right? But I think in thinking about how we work with our athletes today, it isn't just like, oh, well, here's your strength workout. We really try and dive so much deeper with them and sort of look at, again, I'm going to pull back that puzzle analogy, like all those different pieces that with these elite athletes, like the difference between being in this league of, I don't know how many is it now?
156.
There we go. 156, right? The difference between being one of those and being a top one of those to being outside the league, like it really comes down to like, the 2-3%, right? And so that's what these guys are chasing. They're chasing optimal for themselves. And so to do that, not just the strength piece, it becomes strength that's optimized to their needs. It is the Pilates around that, sort of developing and creating that powerhouse that we then take and weave through everything we do and how we move. It is the breathwork side of things. And then the other piece that I think goes really unnoticed, but especially in the W right now, when you think about the schedule, a game day is a high day. And so it's like they're going to have their manual treatment in the morning, and then after that manual treatment they're going to go into a 10 to 15 minute Pilates routine, and then they're going to go into a pre-shoot around routine, and then they're going to go do shoot around, and after shoot around they might take a hyperbaric nap for me in a chamber because we're focusing on recovery, and then they're going to eat their pregame meal, and then they're going to get there and they're going to do their Pilates before the game, and they're going to do their fire series, and then their team warm up, and then their game, and then they're going to lift after the game. So it's like there really are all these layers of their day. It becomes a huge long day. It's a high day, right? Like it's a high intensity day. And the people we're working with, they aren't the ones who are playing 12 minutes a game. These are like Kelsey Plum's playing 40 minutes a game. The load is high. And so we want to keep that day high. We finish with the lift so that the next day becomes truly a recovery day. And by recovery, I don't mean sitting on the couch for the whole day. Certainly part of the day. Like we want that down regulation, right? But we are active in our recovery, right? And so there's so many different tools that we pull into that. We use the pool religiously with a lot of these guys. Just being in the water and that barometric pressure with some light movement helps facilitate swelling reduction. So there's so many different pieces that we'll pull into it. But one of the phrases I like to say is like, hey, we're recovering like we mean it. Like this isn't just like, oh yeah, we'll do recovery. And one of the pieces of that is the nutrition piece. And so I think if you're not diligent or aware of it, inflammation is something that's systemic and it's directly related to what you eat, right? And so yes, it's related also to the fact that like, oh, you sat on a plane for 6 hours going from New York to LA, and how are we going to manually work on that? Or from a neuromuscular standpoint, how are we going to work on that? But it really does also come down to how are you hydrating? What are you eating? What kinds of things are you eating? And are you being intentional about like what you need from a macronutrient standpoint, a micronutrient standpoint? So I'm really fortunate to work with a lot of, a lot of great nutritionists, but it's also something that, yes, it's the supplements, but it really is also sort of choice related and being aware of like, hey, like, well, from a caloric standpoint, like those fries, like great, like we're not worrying about that right now, but from an inflammation standpoint, that's not going to serve you. And so on a day before game, let's be really smart about what we're eating And then you're going to have off days where it's not as impactful if you have that or not. And so we tend to work with people who are sort of all in from that standpoint of, especially in season. I think that when you're in season, like that really is a big focus for us. And it's not to say like, oh, they're perfect, they're eating perfect. Absolutely not. It's like an 80-20. But on the days where it counts, like you kind of got to like be all in that sense, So,
I've seen a lot of athletes also speak out about mental health. Like Cameron Brink is one great example of that. And I was so inspired because I'm someone who has struggled with mental health in the past. And I think a lot of women do. Do you find that as, whether you do it or not, but is that something you address with an athlete blueprint as far as the sort of planning and recovery and support?
yes. So I think there's sort of 3 different fronts on that standpoint. I think when you are in it with someone like this, like you become, like if you think about like your best friend, I'm not saying I'm their best friend, but in a sense of like, this is someone you're choosing to kind of be in your foxhole, you are a source of support for them in a sense. Like you're someone you can bounce ideas off of. You're frustrated, like I get those calls. Like you're crying after a game, like I'm there. Like that's sort of a role, you're not a psychologist, but like you're in that space with them, so you're sort of a source of support in that sense. But then we have performance therapists that sort of look at it more from like okay, when you see in a game, this is a hurdle for you. How are we going to not let that become a mental roadblock for how you're seeing the game? That's just an example. We have that kind, and then we also have more of like the psychologist side of things, where it's deeper, it's more outside of that we work with as well. So we have resources that we use or that we recommend. Some of them come to us and they already have that piece is set for them. But I would say across the board, for the most part, that's something that I think should be included as part of what you're doing, right? And so that's more and more common these days on our side with the athletes we're touching, like, oh, they already started that in college. Like they have someone great that they're talking to and they're continuing with them. But when we first started, that wasn't part of this at all. And so it was kind of like you would feel that like, okay, this is more than what I can give. We need to bring another person into our circle. And so I think that's kind of how we've ended up finding some of these amazing resources that we'll recommend out when we feel like that's appropriate, or agents will ask, and we're really happy to recommend people that have done great jobs with people we work with.
So as an athlete blueprint athlete, are those resources all available?
Yeah, so those aren't included in like what we're offering as a package, but it's more like we think this and this, we should bring that person into the circle. Okay. If you want to do that, like this is, we'll set it up essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Wow. I mean, for me, the mental health aspect has been something that so many women I think suffer with in silence, and to see athletes speak out on it, it's incredibly powerful. Especially because, like, we talk about body confidence and just all of the challenges that go into that, which I think is a good segue to talk about youth. Talk a little bit about this transition into youth for Athlete Blueprint. And you said, see something, say something, right? Yes. Like, that was your catalyst moment. What is the pathway for this opportunity within youth?
Well, I think, so what you said is exactly right. With this 1% to 2% that we're chasing, it's like everything is dialed, it's individualized. It's like that's been the space I've lived in for a really long time. Well, I have 4 kids, and they're now starting to become elite youth athletes. And I'm sitting at these tournaments, and it's like they sit there on the sides. They're watching the game before them, sitting there, right? Oh, okay, 30 seconds left. Let me stand up and get my backpack, and I'm going to go throw my backpack behind the bench. And, okay, we have 2 minutes to warm up, so maybe I'll do a little layup, and then full speed, here we go.
So we were doing this 20 years ago.
I see that. I'm like, okay, well, first and foremost, you start with your own kid. You're like, well, that's not what my kid's doing. Yeah. So I'm going to help her. But in doing that, I'm going to help the team. And it's like, well, that ain't what this group is doing. Like, we're going to set it up. And so in doing that, it's like, wow. So they're out doing it. And it's funny. I was actually at this tournament in California with my daughter. I couldn't do it how they normally do it. And I'm like, okay, come here, you guys. Here, I'm going to set it up. We're going to do it like this. It happens all the time.
You're at, and it's like,
you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yes, it happens. Absolutely. Yeah. And so I'm like getting them through it. And then I get my computer back out. I got to get something done for Stewie. And like, there's a line of like 20 people long behind me being like, what were you doing there? Where did you get those bands? Can I buy that from you? Like, how did you do that? And I'm like, Like, I've felt this, but like parents know enough now that like they know they should be doing something. They just like, what do you do? And like, where do you start, And so I think that is sort of my goal of like, okay, we've got this crew who, this is really important to them. They're practicing how many days a week? They're playing in all these tournaments everywhere. As they grow, they start to create more force. And it's like, if we have no infrastructure built inside of us to withstand all of that, that's a problem. And there are ways to address that. And so I think that will be that's going to be one of our main goals is like, okay, let's give a starting place. And obviously there's so many different ways to extrapolate and build and progress and all of that. But like, what's a really great starting point that anyone playing elite youth sports should be doing? And make it accessible to people and like offer the tools that are needed to go with it and sort of start there, I guess.
I think it's so special, but I also think like at that age, players or kids just want to play basketball, you know? And I feel like that's the mindset of the player, and that's probably the mindset of like the parent as well. But if we could change that way of thinking and make it like fun in some way, I'm going back to like my youth days and I'm like, all I wanted to do was fucking play basketball.
That's what I'm saying.
You
Nobody
know?
wants to like do a warm up so I don't get hurt. Like
No, but it's just the knowing the importance of it.
And if you're gonna do this, and all of a sudden you're gonna move better because you're more reactive, you're into your muscles, like you're gonna play better. That's like, okay, I might be able to buy into that, you know? And it's like if you just get them to try it, and then they're like, whoa, I feel way better. And usually what happens is like they won't do it one day and they're like, I didn't feel great. Like that didn't, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it happens earlier than you think though, of like if you're playing 6 games a week and then you practice, like those are a lot of miles on your body. And so if you don't have any muscles and you're growing at the same time, like that's a lot going through those joints. And so it's like helping build that infrastructure, I think, is sort of the gateway into all these other things that it can snowball into being. I never want it to come from a place of fear, but it's like, I think it's important enough that like if that's the starting place for some people, like, okay, like I'll take that, you know?
I think that generally kids are more like they're sponges, right? And if you can point them in the right direction, especially with how kids have access to information now, they can act on that. And again, as a parent, like I'm raising a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, I want to know these things. But like my general healthcare practitioners don't tell me these things, right? Like I don't even know where to start.
And you don't have to believe me. And that's why I think like we are in this way, like sort of positioned to do this. Don't believe me. Believe Paige and Stewie and Kelsey and all those guys. Like this is authentic because it's what they're doing. If you go to their games, these are the bands they're using. This is what they're doing. And so to boil it down into something that is specific and actionable and based on science-led, like to me, creating that starting point is something that I'm passionate about.
That's what I'm so excited for Athlete Blueprint to unlock in this youth space, because you guys are obviously the trusted source for the best athletes in the world. And like, how can some of that knowledge trickle down to help people like me and my kids?
So I think that's part of it is, yes, it's going to be like an individual athlete, but really it's going to be coaches being like, hey, I know, I think it's like a responsibility if you're working with this population of, you know, 100%. Especially on the female side, but like if you're working with like elite youth athletes, you know there's got to be some sort of warm up. And like even if you don't know what, like let's find something that fits that bill. And that's where I think we'd like to step in and say like, here, this has been thought through, tested, time tested, science led, all those things start here, you know?
So we're going to be doing a youth camp like in about a month. So really looking forward to using some of your teachings.
We would love to
for that.
help with that.
I think for us, and I'm sure you can understand this, Susan, as a parent with 4 kids in sports are very expensive. Access to sport is not as easy as people think, right? It's so important for people in sports who have the resources, who have the knowledge, who have the power to bring people together to be able to create opportunities for these kids in sports. And so, we're doing our first camp. Why we're so excited to have you here too and learn about some of these technologies is because these are technologies that you can probably buy, like parents could buy or coaches can buy, but there's just no one-stop shop to know what is the right technology for us to buy.
What I think about this is like there is so much information out there right now, but like we remove the hurdles and like the choice and the worry of like, what should I be doing? Do I need to be doing more? I got that. You give that to me. Your job is to do. Check all the boxes for me that day. You did your job by doing all those things, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think the same thing on the youth side, it's like there is all this sort of like noise in a sense. This is a great starting place. Let's start here and master this. And then there's certainly places to go from there, but that's our hope to kind of put that out there.
Well, I think what's so cool is, like I said, you've become the trusted source for the most elite athletes in the world. And now that you're willing to come out and share some of this knowledge to help so many other people, like you can become the trusted source for everyday parents. You could become the trusted source for kids like who are like, oh my gosh, I have to go to Athlete Blueprint to know what my checklist is, right? And I find that very exciting because it's just not out there. It's just not out there.
Thank you. We're hoping to do that. We actually just had our very first high school team like from top to bottom, be like, all right, everybody, like we're saying, this is that important. This is a daily thing for every single person in our program. Buy the bands, buy the this, come in and teach it. And it's like that to me, from a player standpoint, it's not a question like, do I want to do this or not? It's like, oh, no, this is important. They say this is important, so this is important. I'm going to do it. And it's like built into kind of their culture. And that is my hope, is that it becomes like the layup line. It's like, before the layup line, this is what you do to get your body ready to go out and do that.
Yeah.
That's the hope, you know?
How different is like the preparation before a game for like the youth versus the elite athlete?
Definitely some similarities in terms of like kind of finishing movements and stuff. Like the way we think about it is you start with sort of mobility, flexibility, and then you move to activation, synchronization, and then fire. And so it kind of like flows in this rhythm. Same thing for a pro, except there's just going to be other layers to it. And so it's like, we're going to get the manual work to make sure everything length tension is right. We're going to make sure we've had a flush, and then we're going to go into our Pilates, and then before that, like, so there's just more layers, I think, and
Makes
then more
sense.
individualization. Like if you've had an Achilles, like you're going to see more calf emphasis in a straight and bent knee single leg position. Like you'll see differences like that, but that's not to say if you're a youth athlete, you're not going to run through those positions as well. You might just not in quite a like laser focused way. So again, there are similarities. It's more just, I think, total time stamps
Makes
spent
sense.
in that time. Like for as a pro athlete, I think you would want to say you're usually starting about 2 hours before the game with kind of your whole routine of things. As a youth athlete, I think you want to start in a way that doesn't leave you sitting. So the analogy we like to use is it's kind of like a train. Like as the train starts, it starts and it doesn't start and then sit and then you're never going to land in the optimal place. And so that's one of the challenges, like with my own daughter. They get like nervous before a game. They're like, oh, we're going to go and do the fire. And I'm like, guys, you don't do it after halftime. You got to go to your ball handling, but then we do that. So it's like you're sweating as you go onto the court, ready to do all the things.
Interesting, you say you do your ball handling. So are you like incorporating basketball drills?
So sometimes I will. For the younger ones, I will. For some of for a couple of our pros, we will also. We try not to like step into the on-court side, but there's like reactivity piece to it that sometimes for specific people I will use a ball, and for
Makes
our
a ton of
youth,
sense.
we've done ball stuff too, just because I think in some ways for them it's like the more they have that in their hand, the
For
better
sure.
going
That's
into
what I was
it.
gonna say. Yeah.
So we will have that. One of the problems though, like having now done this a little bit, is like to find a space big enough where they can all dribble, and like if we've got some bad dribblers, like it's gonna go flying. Like that space has to be a little bigger, and so we can do it without also. Like, you know what I mean? We'll have that option in there for them sometimes.
I like that. Yeah. It's really cool. Can you explain the difference between sports performance and physical therapy?
Yeah. So sports performance is more, you have a healthy body, and how are we dosing, conditioning, strength, sport work in a way that leads you to a better position. So it's like, are you in the off season? Are you in the in season? Like it's all intertwined essentially, but it's for a healthy body trying to perform better. PT is perhaps most thought of like, oh, you go to an office and you've hurt your knee and you're working on that. And so a lot of times, like for example, an athlete has a sprained ankle, or they've sprained their ankle recently, but they're back playing. That ankle isn't just fine now. It's like there has to be elements woven into their performance that are really reflective of that need, and it works its way up the chain. So it's like that piece would be woven into that athlete who sprained their ankle 3 weeks ago, even though they're out of PT per se, it's reflected in their performance plan and sort of what exercises we're dosing and how we're dosing it and when and all of those things. So like, are they lifting post game? And I include a lot of balance work because they're tired, and so we're going to get a lot out of it that way, or lots of different things like that.
I think what's so amazing about the space that you're in, and such an opportunity to unlock for more women, is the way our healthcare system is set up is not preventative. Most everyday women don't have a performance coach, right? But I think that your knowledge has such an opportunity to inspire so many women to be thinking about these things and being more preventative. When you have a new client or you look at the portfolio of athletes, what are some of the variables that you find are fairly consistent?
Usually one of the things we find with anyone we start with, whether that is an elite athlete or a youth who's sprained or who's torn her ACL twice and is like, we're the last stop, they've told her she's not going to play anymore. Wow. They all have really weak hips. And that's not something that's ever really worked on in a sense, unless you're purposely doing it. It's one of those things that if, I guess one of our slogans is magic equals consistency. And hips are that, essentially. Like, if you consistently work on them, that's where the magic is. I think the problem is, you know, we have like this epidemic of ACLs is what everyone says, right? And it's like, oh, well, we don't have any research on female bodies. True, we need more research on female bodies, but we have enough research. We're just not taking action right now. Okay. We are leaving it on the table with what we are not doing and we currently know are reducers of injury, right? And so that to me is one of those things, like, I'm working here, we're like in this really specialized way, and now I'm seeing this right here, and it's like, there's actually nothing specialized that has to happen right here. There's something that everybody here needs to be doing. And I've become like pretty passionate about this, of like, okay, I know what needs to be done. I know the research, I know all the things. I'm doing it with these people. Like, literally, this is Stewie's warm-up. This is Paige's warm-up. This is what Sue's doing. This is what the national team is doing. Why are we not doing any of that at this age when we have this epidemic of injury, right? But it's not even from an injury perspective. It's actually from a performance perspective. Like, don't do something so you don't get hurt. Do something because you want to play really well. Get yourself fired up to go for that game, right? And so that's one of the things, like, we're working on a couple of really special projects right now that are really kind of near and dear to my heart, and I can't wait for them to kind of get out there. But in the interim, we sort of are kind of like grassroots starting it. Like, my daughter's AU team, they're all doing it. There's a high school we just started with, they're all doing it. And so, you know, other AU programs, and it's like, eventually what happens when they're doing these series, it's like they all feel so sore to start. They're like, oh my God, this is so hard. And but then the magic is the consistency. They get into it and they're like, wow, I feel so much better. My knees don't hurt when I do that before I play. And it's like, that's where the magic lies.
So when I first tore my ACL, I was 15, and I hadn't even touched the weight room at that point. Like, never been in a weight room until I got to college.
But you were producing tons of force at that point. And that's like, you don't have the infrastructure to withstand 6 games a weekend without any infrastructure, right?
Right.
Like,
and I just feel like if we had those resources back then, like, things would have probably been very, very different.
I mean, and so it's like, you can't say that for sure, right? Like,
no, you can't.
Injury is part of sport, but it's like, control what you can control, right? It's like, I want to check the boxes of the things I know I should be doing to get myself ready to go play at an elite level. If I'm trying to be an elite youth player, I got to do the things that get me ready to do that, right? And so that's sort of the place that I think we're missing right now.
What is one thing that parents can do to help their kids as they're thinking about their sport?
I think helping younger athletes develop a schedule and a routine is probably the most valuable thing, especially for parents who have, you know, like elite youth athletes, like kids who like are chasing something, they want to go and do it. I think there's like this line you have to walk of like, you can't push them to their dream, but like the analogy we like to use at our house is, all right, you got to be the engine, but I'll be the gas. So you tell me like that's what you want, like I will help you do anything, because we're kind of in this space of like, we actually kind of know what you might, you know, like some of the things you need to do, but like I don't want to push you in a way that you're not pushing yourself. Like, I can't want it more than you want it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's a team.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think helping them create that schedule and sort of like build out those layers a little bit. Like for my 4th grader, it's like, you know, she's not going to be capable of the same things my 7th graders are. Like, she shouldn't be doing those things necessarily in the same way, but it's like helping build out those little extra pieces of like, okay, you have a game at 10 in the morning. All right, we're going to do your little Pilates, and you're going to go over and you're going to warm up your shot, whether it's outside or in a gym, you know, we're going to build that in a little bit, you know? So I think it's adding those layers so that you do have this routine of like, this is what I do on a game day, and I help get myself ready in that sense. I think that's really important.
So helpful. I never heard that feedback ever. I mean, I remember like some warm-up drills, but that was never part of our curriculum.
I think routine is super key. I mean, I'm like thinking back to, I had a routine.
I bet you did. Like, so did I.
Yeah,
like,
it was a very basic routine. It wasn't a routine that I should have been doing, but I still had somewhat
like,
of a routine.
In that routine, I think that's where like that consistency is magic. Like,
for sure.
There really is something about that. Like, this is how I prepare myself, and it is physical, but it's also here.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, you get yourself in that space. And one of the other things we're really big on is like, did you bring your water? Did you bring your snack for between games? A lot of times these guys play like a game at 1 and a game at 3. So there's this hour where you're in the gym and you've just like played a ton, and then you're going to sit there and then you're going to go do it again. And it's like, what, are you going to get popcorn at this, or a hot dog? No. Like, and so we try and have like all those things available for them to choose from, but not be like, here's your snack. It's like, no, you pack it. And like, what are you thinking about? What would you need? What would your body need during that time frame, you know? And so
Let
kind
them
of
be
like,
the
trying
driver.
to teach them a little bit.
You know, my daughter's 6. I'm at this point where I have to start making some decisions about what sports do I want to get her into and what are the things that are going to help motivate her and keep her in, because I think it's easy for parents to let their kids quit too.
Also that, but I think what you're doing is actually really smart. It's kind of what we really tried to do because, you know, both my husband and I were basketball players. And so it's not like, well, we're going to have hooper. Like, we didn't want that to be what it was because, as you know, like, if this is something you end up wanting to do later, like, it's hard. Like, you got to love it. Like, so if it's not something you love, like, find what you do love, essentially, I think, right? So, like, we were the, you know, they all did soccer. They all did, you know, taekwondo. They did track. They did this. And so I think letting them, like, try the gamut and then figuring out what they love. Like I said, we had 2 dancers, and I'm like, what do we do? But, like, they loved it. And so we're like, all right, here we go. Let's go in. And so I think that was really important for us. And then the other thing, too, is they don't need to be playing on an AU team when they're 7. Like, be at the park. Learn how to balance. Learn how to use your body and skip and do all the things. Like, we had so many people being like, you guys aren't playing. Like, they're not doing that yet. We're like, no, we're not. We don't need to do that.
Yeah. When are they starting AAU nowadays?
Oh, I want to say 8.
8 years old.
Like 10 and under, 9 and under.
That's
8,
wild.
like, maybe something along those lines. But it's like the leagues that are happening. Like, it's just, we feel like it's actually backwards here. And you'll, I think, probably agree with this perhaps, given all your overseas time. But it is so different overseas. You practice and you do skill work all the time. And then you play 1 game a week.
Yeah.
Here, it's like, let's just play. We don't need to practice.
You don't
like,
practice.
Don't practice.
Yeah.
And we're like, we don't need more games. We need the skills to transfer then into the games. And so that's kind of what we've done. This is our first year playing, like, legit, like, 15 and under AU stuff with our twins. And, like, they're young for that. But, like, they were both really, like, wanting it and ready for it. But up until now, we've been like, nope, we're not playing in the spring. You guys are going to run track. We're going to do skill work. We're going to take a step away from, like, all that pounding and really work on things that you guys individually need to work on. And so that, I think, is my biggest advice, is like the people who are setting up all these tournaments and games and extra things, I don't know that they're really thinking long term, like, okay, what's best from, like, a developmental and body perspective for these guys. And so that kind of does fall on the parent to be like, all right, what's the best fit for my kid in terms of balancing playing and then balancing body, balancing skill, balancing all of that. And mine too, like, they need a break.
Yeah.
Like, they have to have a break too. So
Totally. Well, now, so I have a lot of parent friends that have kids that are a little bit older who are telling me about these sports schedules and how often they are and when they are. And I'm like, how am I going to keep up? Like, I'm going to need to clone myself. But it's just, I think that's such an interesting piece of feedback and getting kids into the right mindset and the right skill path to be successful in their sports.
Yep.
So how do we change that here?
I think it's hard when it's like, you know, you don't want your kid to miss out, and you want them to be good enough to be on this team. You don't want to fall behind. I think that's like the worry of, like, we don't want to be behind because it is so competitive, so young. But it's like, if you take a step back out of it and you really think about, like, okay, if we're just, like, repeating the same skill on, like, spin cycle and it's not the right skill, is that helping them? So that's where I think we are both like, hey, they got to, like, work on the skill piece outside of the game.
For sure.
You know, and then that will then transfer over. And you do not need 900 games a year. No. You don't. And your body doesn't need that. And, like, when I was at Stanford, I was a performance coach there. Yeah. You know, you're getting these All-Americans, these amazing players, amazing athletes. We got a ton of miles on these bodies by the time they're arriving.
It makes me think of, like, the wear and tear that I had, you know, in high school. Like, so much wear and tear on my knees. Mm-hmm. And then I didn't play for like 5 to 6 years because every time I tore my ACL, it was like 1 year after the other. So when I got back, I, like, had less miles on my body at that time compared to the person that was in my age group because I hadn't played for so many years. And I think
fresh as a daisy, huh?
You know what I mean? But, like, just the wear and tear that I had from, like, before until that point, it was just very different, and, like, it felt different too.
It's so true. And it's, like, weird to think about that for, like, you know, your 15-year-old in some ways, but also it's not. Yeah. It's actually not. Like, when you think about it, it's like, is this body made to do the exact same movement patterns year-round at a high-intensity level? The answer is no.
Yeah, no.
The answer is no. Huh. And so it's like, you got to think about, you got to, like, build the infrastructure to withstand that. Yeah. You've got to build the skill, and then the games are really an important piece to that too, but it's like, it can't just be that, because that's not going to be the recipe for, like, long-term, like, body health and success. Right. I don't think.
No,
so
I mean, I'm with you.
What would you say up to this point in training all these incredible athletes, Sue Bird, Kelsey Plum, Paige Bueckers, you name it, other athletes. What is like one of your proudest moments that you can recall?
I feel like I have so many, like, not proud mom, like that's not the right term for it, you know, but like you've seen them put in all this hard work, and you're kind of like, and then they go out and you're like, yes, you know, like, not that you're like in it with them, but in a sense, you know, like in the background you are. And so I guess maybe I would say probably two moments. My first one was I've done 2 Olympic rounds now.
Oh,
and
nice.
I went to the first one in Tokyo, and it was during COVID. And I went kind of sort of at Sue's idea of like, would you ever? Because I hadn't had anyone up until that point in a performance role, really. And I was like, yeah, I think I would. But for me, that was a really big commitment because I was away from my kids, away from my family. It's a lot of time, like in Bulgaria. And I mean, not Bulgaria, but like, I think we did go to Serbia, and like we went to like a lot of places, right?
Yeah.
And so I think when we won the gold there, like she came over and gave me a huge, and that was like we did it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like that for me was one. And then I think this past year in the W, seeing Stewie win her finals, I was sort of present for all of those, of those games.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And just sort of seeing everything she had overcome and sort of that transition to New York and sort of taking something that wasn't and growing it into something that is now an empire is pretty incredible. So
Yeah, I mean, the work that you did with her after her Achilles, and for her to reach that point and, you know, win a championship.
She is just like, she's incredible, truly.
She really is. But I mean, that's an amazing journey, and I'm sure like I can understand why that's like a huge moment for you.
I think that's part of it. Like when you ask me like what are these moments, but I guess for me it really isn't even the moment. It's more like the journey of it, you know, because like you are with them on that day to day, and like you see everything that goes into just a day, and then you multiply that into a year, and so to see some of these outcomes, the outcomes are great, but like being on the journey with someone like that and just like seeing their drive and their desire, I think that's like probably the coolest part.
I love that. Great answer.
Well, Susan, we've learned so much from you today, from what is it like to be an elite athlete, a performance coach, how you're building this community of women that are just doing incredible things on the court and off the court, what you're going to do for youth. And it's just such an honor for us to have you in our studio
Thank you guys.
today.
This is so cool what you guys are doing, truthfully. Like what a cool platform to be out there sharing stories like this.
It's just it's like Lauren said, it's just been really cool to hear everything that you had to say and really get to pick your brain on these things, because you're so talked about in the women's basketball space, and to actually be able to sit here and learn from the stories that you've experienced is just really cool for me personally and really hit home. So thank you so much for being here. You get absolutely amazing.
Well, thank you. It's been a privilege.
My legs are on fire right now.
My glutes are shaking.
Susan is so amazing. She took us out and put us through some of the drills that she takes these elite athletes. So I truly felt like I was getting trained by greatness. And when I tell you, I was so nervous. I was like, perform for Susan. Like, don't fuck this up.
You did so good.
But also just, it was so, I could imagine if I was an elite athlete, I would want to work with Susan.
I mean, you said it. You took the words out of my mouth. I feel like just in that 10-minute session with her, she was so into it, and she was there, and everything was very intentional, and she wanted to teach us. You know, who are we? Like, we just, we're the Click Clack podcast. Like, she didn't have to put that much energy and emphasis on like that little bit of training, and that I feel like I'm sure she shows that in every person that she touches.
Yeah, it's why she's built an amazing community around her. Mm-hmm. So Susan, I probably won't be able to walk tomorrow, but I also thank you for that.
I'm not built for that anymore.
We'll be dropping that footage on our social of us literally shaking.
We sure will.
Borderline crying, but also having the best time.
Absolutely.
So make sure you see it on our social. That workout that she had us go through was life-changing.
I love how dramatic you are.
I am really dramatic.
Yes, it was really good. Like, I've done so many things in my, PT days, and like that, like very basic band workout that she puts her athletes through before and after a game. Like, it was hard as fuck.
Yeah. I never had access to this level of performance and this knowledge. So I kind of geek out and fangirl about it.
Yeah, as you should.
I learn, like, it gets me excited. Just like getting the opportunity to sit with her number one, she was incredible. I mean, this woman is single-handedly working with some of the biggest athletes in the WNBA, helping them achieve their goals, building community, raising 4 young athletes, probably also has a bunch of other skills we didn't talk about. Like, she's the definition of a multidimensional woman.
One of the things that really spoke to me from our interview was her impact on the youth right now and what she's doing for the youth. And I think that is something that obviously I see and I wish that I had when I was younger. All I remember was just being in the gym, constantly being in the gym. And that's getting up shots, getting up reps, playing against the guys, constantly playing 5-on-5 any chance that I could get, working on ball handling drills, everything that was very basketball focused. For what she's doing to teach the younger generation, to teach her kids, and I'm sure she was inspired because she has young kids and she wants to be able to show them, you know, the athlete blueprint, and she paved the way for them as well. Starting these kids young is going to be so life-changing and could actually change the trajectory of someone's career. Now, if I had that when I was younger, I probably wouldn't have torn my ACL, you know, and my path would have been very, very different. So I think it was an honor for me to sit here and listen to her and watch her and learn from her. And I'm going to use this information too for my kids someday.
Absolutely. And I think for me, coming from the parent perspective, seeing how she's solving problems, like she's out in the field with her kids and she could easily like not do anything, but she's like, no, this is an opportunity. I want to help. I want to change this. I want to help and support these kids. Like, that to me is a true innovator. And as a parent, I'm constantly asking myself, what can I do better for my kids? What can I learn? What can I show them? Or what can I give them access to? And I think what she's built is truly like the opportunity for her knowledge to scale and reach more people is huge. So that, to your point, like maybe she can change someone's life like a little Jackie, right?
Yeah.
And that's a pretty powerful thing.
Yeah, she is. And going back to her band workout, I think just like really firing up your muscles before you actually go into your competitive sport, whether it's running or, you know, playing an elite game or whatever it is, that is truly the key. And I think that's what she really emphasizes is just like firing up those muscles and getting them going so that you know, do as much as you can to prevent injury.
Well, and how lucky are we that someone like her is in our backyard and is willing to take the time and come on our show and really like pull all of these magical tools that she brings to elite athletes that we can share with all of you. Like, that is incredibly special. And we hope you really enjoyed listening to Susan because you can feel her passion.
She's truly the athlete blueprint.
Girl, say less. All right, I think you're ravenous right now, so it's time for you to get a big piece of pizza.
At some point of the episode, like, I always reach that level of starvation.
Yeah, we need to have like something hanging over that has a pizza so you can be like, anyways, we love you all. Thank you for sitting through another guest interview, and we hope that you're learning a lot from these women. They are truly fueling everything that we're doing here on Clack.
Yeah, we just hope you enjoyed it as much as we did.
That's right. Well, I love you, boo.
Love you
High five.
too.